Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So as I mentioned, you're all muted during the webinar, so please send your question through the chat. Well, let's get into the webinar. Before we go into the content, let us introduce ourselves. So let Gary start.
Sure. My name is Gary Steer. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at GSX, Microsoft MVP along the way, and what they used to call a Certified Master or a Ranger as well on Microsoft Exchange, and then the MCSM on messaging as well. And then with me today is Olivier.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So hey everyone, my name is Olivier Reynolds, Technical Sales Manager at GSX and Microsoft Specialist here, focusing mostly on Office 365 and the messaging and collaboration workloads. So just some of you might have been on the first session. This is like our technical webinar series. So what we want to do here is really have a technical format, not focus on the product at all. We're not going to spend too much time in PowerPoint. We do have a few slides to begin with to explain well, the concept, what we were trying to do here. But the goal is to have an easy flowing format and focus on the data. So we have gathered data with using GSX products, but here the goal is really to focus on that data on some technical challenges. And today's theme is focusing on ExpressRoute. We have heard a lot of things. We're going to go through that, but we want to focus on what it is, what it can do, and focus on the Exchange Online performance. So that's what we'll check today. Please come back for some more items, more webinars on this series. We want to address other technical topics in the future, like looking at different protocols, different Outlook protocols, MAPI, over HTTP, RPC, Exchange Web Services, compare that, look at more than just email, look at the other workloads. But if you have any suggestions too, we're happy to run our simulation, do some data analysis and gathering to go through some specific use cases. So let's introduce the agenda for today.
Yep. So today's agenda we'll keep short and kind of focus on transferring as much knowledge as we can. So I think we'll just quickly go through what is ExpressRoute, go into an ExpressRoute performance test, and then we want to make sure that we actually do show you ways that you can increase performance on your network if it's something that you feel is necessary or something that you need to do. So we'll just go ahead and kind of jump into this. I think it's the easiest way. So this this particular topic came up because of different things that I have personally seen. I know Olivier's seen some of them. The top one, actually, we heard right from a customer who said that ExpressRoute makes mailbox moves significantly faster. And I've also seen and heard that it makes Exchange Online slower because it's designed to be a security tool. And the one I think that is probably out there pretty heavily is that people believe Office or ExpressRoute with Office 365 will increase your Office 365 performance. So this is what's floating around out there. And I think before we start to take a look at what's going on, it really have to take a look at, well, what is ExpressRoute? Well, first off, what is this thing that can do all of these magical features and capabilities?
So, so there's a lot of different things you can find online, and a lot of different information put out by Microsoft. I went through all those documents. We've had some discussion with the Office 365 networking team. And the shortest way to put it is that ExpressRoute is really a logical connection to connect to in some cases Office 365, but to Microsoft Data Center. So it's a logical connection between a peering provider that can provide you with ExpressRoute and a Microsoft peering location.
And that's an incredibly generic sounding statement, but I'm a stickler for architecture. I really like to look at what something's built for, what it's designed for, what the purpose of it is. I think it's really important that you understand, and as we've heard these statements from customers direct who have these beliefs, that in and of itself, ExpressRoute is not designed to be a performance solution. It's not in and of itself. And it's not designed to be a security solution either. It's designed to be a tool for you. And depending upon the scenario or the situation that you happen to encounter, you may find use for it, but it is not from its design. It is not going to, you know, when the architecture was set up, this doesn't make packets move faster than they normally move. I mean, you know, the wire is what it is. It's a tool that you have available for you in your toolbox.
So let's take a look at our test, I think, Gary. Well, just to call out, so there are 3 different actual technologies for ExpressRoute. The one that we are focusing on today is the one connecting to Office 365, so it's what is called the Microsoft peering. So here's what we tested. I mean, we wanted to test really those rumors, and we wanted to test accessing Exchange Online, so how end users access that to access their mail with and without ExpressRoute. So we had a few customer locations that were using ExpressRoute, and what we've done is go to those locations and gather data going through ExpressRoute to access mailbox on Exchange Online and go without ExpressRoute to that location. And we've gotten, well,
we failed.
Yeah, we
actually
failed. Some mixed and
this is I'll take responsibility here. So it's honestly what, you know, we had a discussion with the Office 365 networking team, and the first question that they asked, well, honestly, I'd never considered. When you look at what ExpressRoute is, it's a connection to a designated Microsoft peering point. So an entry point, if you want to think of it that way. There is no guarantee that your entry points with ExpressRoute is actually better than your internet provider's entry points. There's no guarantee that it's worse either. So we did not actually, and again, this goes back to me. I mean, you know, from the technology standpoint of thinking through this, the first thing you need to do if you want to evaluate a technology like ExpressRoute, this is basic networking and basic math, distance. You know, how are you going to get to Microsoft's network in the shortest time? There was no consideration on my behalf to ensure that the places we were running the tests from were actually in a position that put them closer than, or at least even parallel we would need, to the ISP. So we weren't comparing clean paths. And this is our diagram trying to do the best we can to show you that, you know, the ISP might be the shorter path. It might be quicker, and it might not. But you need to understand those questions. You need to understand, you know, what city you're in, what is the ExpressRoute entry point in your city, and based upon that entry point in your city, you know, where can your ISP get you onto Microsoft's network? Without that detail, there's no possible way that you're going to be able to properly build, you know, really the latency envelope calculation that you need to do to understand what should this traffic look like, all things considered equal. So I think, you know, the question that came to mind to me is, well, where did these rumors come from? Somebody had to think it was faster. And this diagram, I think this is a good way to understand just how, you know, our test, which we were trying to prove the performance of ExpressRoute, without actually looking at all of the facts. And don't worry, we'll get to facts in just a second. But without trying to prove all of the facts, it was not paying attention to the reality. In the slide that we've got up, there's a nice, quick, easy path that is significantly longer to get to the final destination. But it would be quicker. You've got gridlock, traffic jam. It's ignoring the actual facts that happen to be presented to us. So let's take a look at the facts.
Yeah. So here's what we've done. It's kind of our second experiment, and this is in line with what we announced in the agenda. So we have tested two big use cases, things that we see out there in most of the enterprise companies worldwide. They have offices in different locations, usually a headquarter. So in our example, we've used 2 locations. So the first, it's actually, no, sorry, 2 tests performed from the same location, just like two users accessing Exchange Online. both located in Philadelphia, so in the US, and actually connecting to an Office 365 tenant located in Europe. In that use case, a global company, international, would probably have headquarters in Europe somewhere, each of the branch offices connecting to that location and then breaking out to the internet.
And one thing, let me just throw out there, because I just love to interrupt Olivier there, sorry about that. But this use case really, when we spoke to the Office 365 networking team, they had a lot of great advice for us, gave us a lot of good detail on things to look at, what the recommendation was. So I think, the guidance we got was that you want to break out to the internet and get your packets handed off to Microsoft as quick as you possibly can. Typically, a lot of our customers that we're doing assessments with to help them understand where the performance problems may be, or perceived performance issues, because many times there actually might not be a problem. But when we're trying to determine what might be going wrong, where could you do something better, we've got a very common use case, and not just in Europe, but the common use case is backhaul the internet to corporate and send it out from corporate. So we thought we would take this a step further. We're actually in our France office today, as a side note. But we thought that, since our tenant's out of EMEA, we would test this, put the ultimate test on it. We would bring the data back right through corporate, or we'd send some out to the internet, out of Philadelphia, to where, we've got to make it across the pond here to get that information back to the other side. So it's a scenario that we see so frequently when we're working with customers on problems to try to get through and help them understand. We frequently see this backhaul everything to corporate.
A lot of the times. So before we actually jump into the data and analyze it, just a quick thing to mention. So as you can see here on the top and in the left diagram, we looked at the hops because very often people look at those network metrics and consider less hops to be better. Well, so here, the one that breaks out from the US to the internet, so connects to an endpoint of Microsoft in the US and then go to the EMEA tenants, actually had 26 hops that we've seen in between end-to-end, in between the location and the endpoint. And the one that connects directly to the front office and then breaks out to the internet had 15. So which one do you think was actually faster?
Well, and interestingly, someone who happens to be sitting in this room, went with the old knowledge that fewer hops is always better. If you're working off of that knowledge, then theoretically you would believe that it should have been going back through headquarters. So here's the actual data that we got, and we pull it in Power BI like we normally do.
So yeah, here's what you see. Like those were taken from like some of the assessment that we perform sometimes. We wanted to focus on very specific metrics. The first thing that we wanted to call it is that, so yes, we do look at like the open mailbox test, but it doesn't really, it doesn't matter as much, I think, is when we go out there, discuss with the customer, and really the complaints and support ticket that they get in some cases are mostly on the actual action that they perform, like looking up the FreeBusy status, creating some meeting, and actually the open mailbox does not have much of a difference in that use case, although the impact is pretty big on all of those actions.
Well, yeah, I mean, typically someone gets a cup of coffee, but interestingly, even between these two scenarios, it did not make a difference. But so if we go to the reason we focused on FreeBusy Lookups, when we work with customers, the biggest thing people they care about is where someone happens to perceive that there's a performance issue. You notice it when you're trying to do something. So when you schedule a new meeting and you're waiting for those bars to fill in, that is where people really notice it. When you're trying to, actually click the create meeting and you're waiting for this whole process to finish, that's where you notice this. So we started with the FreeBusy Lookup as a basic test. Going from Philadelphia through headquarters, which is the greenish kind of color, I'm going to call it, the average over the range we've got filtered at the moment here was 1 second for the test that we put in place. That's the one that goes back through corporates on the backhaul with a 15 hop process, start to finish. So if we look at what happens when you go out to the internet direct, so when we drop the traffic from Philadelphia right onto the network, let it hit a local Microsoft entry points, we're actually a little over 40% faster right off the bat. And you know, we choose to focus on the ones here that generate a lot of tickets, but
yeah, let's increase it. I mean, it's just we wanted to focus on that time frame because some of the data you'll see was missing. We had some Windows updates going, but I mean the data is consistent throughout the different days that this test was running, and always giving that kind of 40% improve on the FreeBusy status in our case, and even more on the create meeting, somewhere in between 50 to 60% depending on the days.
It's I think it's an important thing for you know, to pay attention to and to notice when you're looking at what you can do to improve performance. You know, we wanted to make sure that we tested the guidance that's being published. In this particular scenario, it is something that makes an incredible difference. I guess when you think about it, if you look at the fact that Microsoft has a massive, incredibly fast network, whatever connection speed we have between point A and point B, it pales in comparison to the performance and optimization that's been put out there. I would have still expected to see something a little different, to where maybe breaking out was not such a big difference, but on the things that generate tickets where you really need the performance, it's going to make a tremendous difference. Even down to the next two kind of charts we have on the bottom.
And well, even before I want to call out, because you could kind of contest that data and think that actually the local network in the headquarters is pretty bad. So we wanted to verify that. So we've added another robot user. That one is actually directly from the NIST office, so the headquarters, and connecting to the tenants. And so obviously it's the fastest, but it's actually not that far off from the one that's breaking out to the internet directly from Philadelphia to and go to the internet from there. It's somewhere here you can see like 0.46, 0.59, so about like 10–20% faster, but kind of way in range. And same thing for the create meeting. You can see the open mailbox, it's much smaller, but again, it doesn't have that much impact. So the other thing that we looked at, and we often do that like when we do those assessments to understand really what's the impact of those metrics. Like in some locations, what you don't really want with your end users is that they're not happy and they complain about that performance, and it takes too long when they have, I don't know, presentation that they're building, and they're creating a new mail, adding attachments, looking at the status for that meeting they're scheduling the next day with their boss, and they don't want this to be long. So we'll often look at how many requests would have been higher that kind of user expectations, so that what we can see here, like those FreeBusy lookups above 3 seconds, those create meetings above 3 seconds. And well, here again, like the one that is calling back to the headquarters and had a significant amount of those requests, about 16 during a bit more than 48 hours. If you multiply that by the number of users, number of locations, that would have been a lot of potential support tickets coming in. With, if you don't have anything like this, any of those metrics, it's kind of hard to solve those tickets and investigate.
Yeah, one thing about that number, just again, we get really excited when we load this data and see great things. But where we got that 3-second number, it's just like one we end up going with. If we're looking at a customer environment, you actually need to gather data and then align the inbound ticket count to see when things came in with what was actually happening on the network, to get a feel for where their pain point is, where customer X, what do their users expect? Because the reality of this is that, you've got different speed computers. You've got, laptops, some are newer, some are older, images that may have more complex things on them. There are a lot of scenarios, a lot of complex things that take place. So we need to come up with a baseline for where is the problem, and when we're trying to do it and help, understand what, the user perception is, because it really, a lot of it is perception. In our last episode, we talked about separating fact from fiction. People think it's slow, but is it really any different than it was? But we look for the pain point. We take the actual tickets, align them with what we got. These numbers are, off the top of my head, they could have been from the last time we ran one of these, or they could be the average we see. You need to understand your environment, even down to the thing that, you know, like I said, I'm the one who didn't really think to dig into the networking topology, but you have to understand the environment, the user base, to really make sure you have all the information that you need to properly do this. So that's the number we run with, and you know, back to Oliv's point, yes, you know, it makes a big you know, difference. You can see that when we backhaul through corporate, what seems like it should be quicker, it's the one that generates the tickets. We are not generating tickets when, you know, or as many in this particular case, when you are going direct, or, you know, create meeting didn't trigger any scenarios.
Yep. So I'm not sure we have time to go through the other use cases.
Well, there's at least one more for fun that I want to pull up. This is, well, two things. Again, data clarity. And because these are short webinars, if you have any questions, please reach out, ask. We'll be happy to provide you a copy of the information, give you what you're looking for. You know, we're more than happy to provide the information. You know, we do this just to help. But you notice there are two flat spots there, like right over September 13th. We may or may not have missed some Windows updates that may or may not have affected the system gathering data. You know, we can either confirm or deny. But again, even with that blank spot that's come in, the averages are still reasonably consistent for what they happen to be along the way. You know, we see the same information and results happening time and time again. Every different way we ran this scenario, going to the Microsoft network as quick as you can was the best thing you could possibly do. You know, it just made a big difference. But the last scenario, so that we're missing there, you know, you can see we don't have one more box checked, but so for fun, we took a request and we forced it to use a IP address resolved in the US, then send the traffic back to EMEA, to where it would then be sent back to the US IP address, only to be routed back to Microsoft again.
It sounds fun, but it's an actual use case.
It is, yeah. So I had a customer that was moving to Office 365. Performance was horrible, and we couldn't figure out what kept going wrong. And when we started digging in to this customer environment to see what was happening, what was taking place, as we dug in, what we found out eventually, and for whatever reason, we didn't think to check the basics first, which we always do now. You know, learned a good lesson here. This was an office out of, I want to say Belgium, but Europe in general, that the IT guys felt that Google made the best DNS in the world. Now, you know, I'm kind of a Microsoft guy, so I may or may not agree with that statement. That's opinion. However, it was resolving West Coast United States IP addresses and routing all of the traffic from the local office all the way to the other side of the world. So no wonder the performance was horrible. You really have to actually look at your environment and make sure that you understand what's happening. And as you can see, the second we put this one in, we laugh at it because it's funny, but the middle chart has been entirely dwarfed by it. All the other ones are covered in yellow. It generates by far the most tickets. As you would expect, it is a terrible performance impact overall on the environment and what's taking place. So, you know, it's get the packets as quick as you can, I think, is what we saw when we were, you know, doing this performance analysis. And if anyone's interested in what we got, you know, in terms of the data looks like this for ExpressRoute, we can give it to you, but it's contradictory because, again, we did not, or this is me specifically, actually take the time to run through that network config.
So I think we can go back to the slide real quick and kind of summarize a bit what we've seen. And we've had many questions, but keep going. We'll address them right after with the time left. So I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've seen, especially at first when we're going against all those rumors, and like honestly, like some of us until recently thought the same, like because you keep hearing those and you don't get that many facts, is that, well, first, before considering ExpressRoute, you need to consider really all the options. And I mean, what we heard too when we were discussing with Office 365 network team is you need to invest in your network. Look at what is the real root cause of those issues. Gather facts, gather those metrics, you know, understand from every location, every action, understand what those metrics are, investigate the root cause for that, because yeah, in that example, like, so ExpressRoute is going to give you something more predictable, probably, but it's not necessarily going to give you better performance. It might give you better performance. It might give you similar or even worse performance. I mean, it's not a magic solution for the performance. It requires a lot of skills and assessments before you can actually implement that. So really discuss with Microsoft if you're looking to go through the ExpressRoute route, I guess.
But I think that this little diagram we built, I think there's a nice way to get a feel for this. If you have to spend money, if I'm going to do something with the connection either way, I'm spending money in either of these scenarios. I'm either giving more internet bandwidth or I'm going to put in a private connection to ExpressRoute. As I think this, picture really helps, show you and point out, you're now in a situation where a direct, maybe increasing the bandwidth locally is the right decision. You would end up with a much faster connection direct where you need it to be instead of taking the longer path. And again, this is a generalization. The scenarios we ran, one did, work better mildly, the other one did not, because it was not looking at the proper, the proper scenario, the proper issues, that what's the best way. And a local connection, if you're going to spend money, consider how you can do it.
Yeah, and that's really high level. I mean, don't think that generally speaking, just expand your bandwidth, you'll be good. There's a lot of things out there, but if you look at the recommendations, like going through those different layers, we looked at in the previous webinar that authenticated proxy, how much impact it had on the performance. Things like that, like every single layer that you have in between is not going to help. So really look at your network, invest there first for the performance before going to any other path.
Yep, and there are scenarios where ExpressRoute's a fit. There are performance scenarios where ExpressRoute's a fit. There are compliance scenarios where ExpressRoute is a fit. But that does not mean that it is automatically a security fix. It's automatically a performance fix. It's all based upon your environment. What you have, what's in place, and as Liv mentioned, some of the previous tests we've done. The last webinar we ran, we put an authenticated proxy in place on purpose, and it gave us worse performance than a system running on an older laptop in Bangalore. Mm. It was really shocking to see just how heavy of an impact these particular things can have against what you're doing. You have to think about everything in the way of that data path from that person's computer till it hits Microsoft's network. And then I think the thing we did prove is that once they've got it, it moves good from there. So a couple of questions that came in.
So yes, so I've seen a few questions on how that data was generated and what that RU letters acronym was standing for. So they were combined. So we can probably explain that first. So all the data that you've seen was actually gathered with our GSX solution, but gathered through what we call robot user. So we actually perform, so it's just like end users accessing Office 365, but instead of just depending what parameters, when, and so on, we just continuously perform those actions and measure the time it takes to perform each of those scenarios, just like you would do in your Outlook clients.
Yeah, and we again, when we run the technical webinars, our goal is not to lead off with a product pitch, so that's why we just wanted to kind of get into data quickly. But many of these we've got from assessments. There was a question on the Power BI part that you see. That's one of our starting points for a report for a customer when we run an assessment for them, to be honest.
So go ahead, if you have any other questions. I think there was one a bit very specific on, so if we have any particular experience that gives some indication on what port speed is required against the number of Exchange users. So that's a good question. I think I think you need to, and we can probably highlight that in a future session, but the different assessments, the Skype.
Yeah, well, the quick answer is right. So, I mean, we say, since the word exchange was used in here, and this is the way that typically we'd handle it when, working with a customer, but if you know your message flow rates, so if you understand well what your use case looks like for your users that are on premises, you can go ahead and actually run a calculator that will tell you you'll need this much bandwidth. It'll help calculate for peaks and valleys, so you know busy times of the day. You can then take that data and compare it against what you've got available for your internet connection. I think, the more of these we do, the more we dig into data, the more that we learn. It's not just bandwidth. You need to do a little more detail than just bandwidth, but the calculation of how much is needed to and from 365 is actually pretty easy to come up with. Microsoft provides a calculator. That's the easier part. It's what's in your network and not just what your internet connection speed is, because as we kind of got quickly schooled in. Where's your connection point? Can your ISP get you into Microsoft's network faster? Who is your ISP? There are a lot of questions that you can get answers to that make a tremendous difference, and amazingly, I still can't believe it's such a big number, but not backboning or sending things back to home. They're just a lot faster dropping off locally.
So I think we went a bit over time. I see a few questions on ExpressRoute, how to set it up, and what should be done in terms of ExpressRoute. I mean, again, so I don't think we can take all the questions, but what I would really stress out is that you should really contact Microsoft for any ExpressRoute setup, because as we've seen today, it's not necessarily a good fit for you. I think you need to go through a heavy assessment before you can do that, and depending on the location, who's going to be your peering provider for setting up the ExpressRoute, there might be different deployments options.
Yeah, there is one question that popped up just a second ago. We need to answer this one. We have to be very clear. So it's just talking about a sample company where we've got one tenant in Europe. Is the solution to have ExpressRoute for each company? No. I think the only thing we can tell you right away, off the cuff, just a quick answer is no. There is no guarantee that that's the solution. Potentially, once you have all of the metrics, but you need to understand everything. So don't assume that ExpressRoute is the answer. ExpressRoute, even though the name says Express, it is just a connection. It might be a slower connection. In this diagram we've got up, ExpressRoute is the right-hand connection. It's the slow one. Now maybe in your network it's the left-hand side one. What we do, we don't know, and you don't know either until you start to dig in and really look at all of the parameters that are involved.
So yeah, I think there were other questions, but please send them through. We'll be happy to follow up and send you those answers to those questions. Or if you want to have a more in-depth discussion about the performance in your locations, if you have any assessments to do, let us know. We can further discuss. In terms of follow-ups, I think, Gary, you have a session pretty soon.
Yeah, yes, and thank you for reminding me. If you're looking for more detail, a little more time with more room, I'm actually presenting slightly more detailed information on this, but just getting into it a little more. At a session I'm presenting at UC Day, the conference in the UK. It's a fantastic conference. It's free to attend, so you can search for UC Day UK. You'll find it. But aside from that, our next webinar too. We've got Ignite coming up. I've got that session. So the next one we do a technicals webinar. It may have a little bit of a gap here just because we've got a few things coming up. And again, there are some great questions popping in that I promise we will answer on the side, because I could keep answering these forever. But we'll get the answers back out to you, because I see ones coming in about potentially Skype for Business, what we can do. We'll get these answers out, and if we don't have them, we can help connect you with someone at Microsoft who does have the answer.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for attending today. We'll follow up for any additional questions. Please fill in the short survey that should pop up, and let us know if you have any specific use cases that you want us to go through and analyze the data. We'll be happy to do that, and we'll let you know for the next webinar in that technical series. Thanks everyone.